Well, welcome to day 21 in daily reading the Bible in 90 days. We're in the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, and remember, David is starting to go crazy. Or not David, Saul. Saul is starting to go crazy. And he's really jealous. He doesn't know that David has been anointed to be king, but it's like he does know. He knows something's up. He knows that there's something really special about David, and he's jealous about it. He's throwing spears at him, and now he's plotting to kill him. And that is kind of, David and Jonathan suspect that he's going to kill him, but we're coming to the story where Jonathan's finding out, yeah, he's going to kill him, and he's telling David to flee. So David's going to go into the wilderness for who knows how long. Maybe we'll find out. We're in 1 Samuel chapter 20, and we're starting in verse 18. And that's kind of why I went over that beginning little, just to tell you where we are, because we're picking up in the middle of a story here. So you remember that David and Jonathan were having the conversation about David letting him know in secret and David's going to hide for like 2 days, going to hide in one spot. So I mean, they knew about quarantine too, didn't they? But it's not like he's in his cozy house with a toilet or anything like that. He's just hiding out in a cave or a camp. All right, let's get started in verse 18. Then Jonathan said to David, "Tomorrow is the new moon feast. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, toward evening, go to the place where you hid when this trouble began, and wait by the stone Ezel. I will shoot 3 arrows to the side of it, as though I were shooting at a target. Then I will send a boy and say, 'Go find the arrows.' If I say to him, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, bring them here,' then come, because as surely as the Lord lives, you're safe, and there will be no danger. But if I say to the boy, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then you must go, because the Lord has sent you away. And about the matter you and I discussed, remember the Lord is a witness between you and me forever." Verse 24. So David hid in the field, and when the new moon feast came, the king sat down to eat, and he sat in his customary place by the wall, opposite Jonathan, and Abner sat next to Saul, but David's place was empty. Saul said nothing that day, for he thought something must have happened to David to make him ceremonially unclean. Surely he is unclean. But the next day, the 2nd of the month, David's place was empty again. Then Saul said to his son Jonathan, "Why hasn't the son of Jesse come to the meal either yesterday or today?" Verse 28, Jonathan said, "David earnestly asked me for permission to go to Bethlehem. He said, 'Let me go, because our family is observing a sacrifice in the town, and my brother has ordered me to be there. And if I have found favor in your eyes, let me go to see my brothers. That is why he has not come to the king's table.'" Verse 30. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, "You are a son of a perverse and rebellious woman. Don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor the kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die. Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" Jonathan asked his father, but Saul hurled a spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew his father intended to kill David. Jonathan got up from the table in a fierce anger, and the second day after the feast he did not eat, because he was grieved at his father's shameful treatment of David. In the morning Jonathan went out to the field for his meeting with David. He had a small boy with him. He said to the boy, "Run and find the arrows I shoot." As the boy ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. When the boy came to the place where Jonathan's arrow had fallen, Jonathan called out after him, "Isn't the arrow beyond you?" And then he shouted, "Hurry, go quickly, don't stop." The boy picked up the arrow and returned to his master. The boy knew nothing about this, only Jonathan and David knew. Then Jonathan gave his weapons to the boy and said, "Go carry them back to town." After the boy had gone, David got up from the south side of the stone and bowed down before Jonathan 3 times, with his face to the ground, and they kissed each other and wept together. But David wept the most. 42. Jonathan said to David, "Go in peace, for we have sworn friendship with each other, in the name of our Lord, saying, 'The Lord is witness between you and me, between your descendants and my descendants forever.'" And then David left, and Jonathan went back to the town. Chapter 21. David went to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him, and he asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" David answered Ahimelech, the priest, "The king sent me on a mission, and he said to me, 'No one is to know anything about the mission I am sending you on. As for my men, I have told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread, or whatever you can find." But the priest answered David, I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women." Verse 5, David replied, "Indeed, women have been kept from us. As usual, whenever I set out, the men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy. How much more so today?" So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken. It was taken away. Verse 7. Now one of Saul's servants was there that day, detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief shepherd. Verse 8. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or a sword here? I haven't brought my sword or any weapon, because the king's mission was urgent." The priest replied, "The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want it, take it. There is no sword here but that one." David said, "There is none like it. Give it to me." Verse 10. And that day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servant of Achish said to him, "Isn't this David, the king of the land? Isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands." Verse 12. David took these words to heart, and he was very much afraid of Achish, king of Gath. So he pretended to be insane in their presence, and while he was in their hands, he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gate and letting saliva run down his beard. Achish said to his servants, "Look at the man, he's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I so short of madmen that you have to bring this fellow here to carry on like this in front of me? Must this man come into my house?" Chapter 22. David left Gath and escaped into the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to see him, and all those who were with him in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander, as 400 men were with him. From there David went to Mizpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, "Would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what God will do for me?" So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed as long as David was in the stronghold. Verse 5. But the prophet of Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah." So David left and went into the forest of Hereth. Verse 6. Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with all his officials standing at his side. He said to them, "Listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make you all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you have all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me, or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me, as he does today." Verse 9. But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, "I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him, and he also gave him provisions and the sword of Goliath the Philistine." Verse 11. The king sent for the priest of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and all the men of his family who were the priests at Nob. They all came to the king, and Saul said, "Listen, son of Ahitub." "Yes, my lord," he answered. Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he has rebelled against me and lies in wait for me as he does today?" Verse 14. Ahimelech answered the king, "Who of all your servants is loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, a captain of your bodyguard, and highly respected in your household? Was that day the first time I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant of anything of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing about this whole affair." Verse 16. But the king said, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your whole family." Then the king ordered the guards at his side, "Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing, and yet they did not tell me." But the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. Then the king ordered Doeg, "You turn and strike down the priests." So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck them down. That day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put to the sword Nob, the town of priests, with its men and women and its children and infants and its cattle and donkeys. But one son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled to join David. He told David that Saul had killed the priests of the Lord. And then David said to Abiathar, that day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul, "I'm responsible for the death of your whole family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid. The man who wants to kill you is trying to kill me too. You will be safe with me." Chapter 23. When David was told, "Look, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah and are looting the threshing floors," he inquired of the Lord, saying, "Shall I go attack these Philistines?" The Lord answered him, "Go attack the Philistines, save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Here in Judah we are afraid. How much more then if we go to Keilah against the Philistine forces?" Once David inquired of the Lord, and the Lord answered him, "Go down to Keilah, for I am going to give the Philistines into your hands." So David and his men went to Keilah and fought the Philistines, and carried off the livestock, and inflicted heavy losses on the Philistines, and saved the people of Keilah. Now Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, had brought the ephod down with him, and when he fled to David at Keilah. Verse 7. Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah, and he said, "God delivered him into my hands, for David was imprisoned himself in entering the town of the gate with gates and bars, and Saul has called up all his forces for battle. Go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men." When David learned Saul was plotting against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod," David said. Lord God of Israel, your servant has heard definitely that Saul plans to come to Keilah and destroy the town on account of me. Will the citizens of Keilah surrender me to him? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? Lord God of Israel, tell your servant. And the Lord said, He will. And David asked again, will the citizens of Keilah surrender me and my men to Saul? And the Lord said, They will. So David and his men, about 600 in number, left Keilah and kept moving from place to place. When Saul was told that David had escaped from Keilah, he did not go there. David stayed in the wilderness strongholds in the hills of the desert of Ziph. Day after day Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. Verse 15. While David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Johnathan went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. Don't be afraid, he said. My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You will be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. Even my father Saul knows this. Verse 18. The two of them had made a covenant before the Lord. Then Johnathan went home, but David remained in Horesh. Verse 19. The Ziphites went up to Saul at Gibeah and said, Is not David hiding among us in the strongholds at Horesh on the hill of Hakilah, south of Jeshimon? Now, your majesty, come down whenever it pleases you to do so, and we will be responsible for giving him into your hands. Saul replied, The Lord bless you for concerning me. Go and get more information. Find out where David usually goes and who has seen him there. They tell me he is very crafty. Find out about the hiding places he uses to come back to me with definite information. Then I will go with you. If he is in the area, I will track him down and among the clans of Judah. 24. So they set out and went to Ziph ahead of Saul. Now David and his men were in the desert of Maon, in the Arabah, south of Jeshimon. Saul and his men began the search, and when David was told about it, he went down to the rock and stayed in the desert of Maon. Then, when Saul heard this, he went into the desert of Maon in pursuit of David. Saul was going along one side of the mountain, and David and his men were on the other side, hurrying to get away from Saul. As Saul and his forces were closing in on David, as his men to capture him, a messenger came to Saul, saying, Come quickly, the Philistines are raiding the land. And Saul broke off his pursuit of David and went to meet the Philistines. That is why they call this place Silla Hama Lekoth. And David went up from there and lived in the strongholds of En-gedi. Chapter 24. After Saul returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-gedi. So Saul took 3,000 able-bodied men from Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. He came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went in to relieve himself. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, This day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. And then David crept up unnoticed and cut a corner of Saul's robe. Verse 5. Afterward David was conscience stricken. Having cut off a corner of his robe, he said to his men, The Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, or lay my hand on him, for he is anointed of the Lord. With these words David sharply rebuked his men and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went his way. Verse 8. Then David went out of the cave and called up to Saul, "My lord the king!" When Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrate his face to the ground. He said to Saul, "Why do you listen to men who say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave, and someone urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, and so my hands will not touch you. 14. Against whom has the king of Israel come out? You are pursuing a dead dog, a flea. May the Lord be our judge, and decide between us. May he consider my cause, and uphold it. May he vindicate me by delivering me from your hand. When David finished saying this, Saul asked, Is that your voice, David, my son? And he wept aloud. You are more righteous than I, he said. You have treated me well, but I have treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good you did to me. The Lord delivered me into your hands, and you did not kill me. When a man finds his enemy, he does not let him get away unharmed. May the Lord reward you well for the way you treated me today. I know that you will surely be king, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hands. Now swear to me by the Lord that you will not kill off my descendants, or wipe out my name from my father's family. Verse 22. So David gave his oath to Saul, and then Saul returned home. But David and his men went up to the stronghold. Chapter 25. Now Samuel died, and all Israel assembled and mourned for him, and they buried him at his home in Ramah. Then David moved down into the desert of Paran. A certain man in Maon, who had property there at Carmel, was very wealthy. He had 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep, which he was shearing in Carmel. His name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail, and she was an intelligent and beautiful woman, but her husband was surly and mean in his dealings. He was a Calebite. Verse 4. When David was in the wilderness, he heard that Nabal was shearing sheep. So he sent 10 young men and said to them, Go up to Nabal in Carmel and greet him in my name, and say to him, Long life to you, good health to you and your household, and good health to all that is yours. Now I hear that it is sheep shearing time, and when your shepherds are here with us, and we did not mistreat them, and the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs was missing. Ask your own servants, and they will tell you. Therefore, be favorable toward my men, since we come at a festive time. Please give your servants and your son David whatever you can find for them. When David's men arrived, they gave Nabal this message in David's name, and then they waited. Verse 10. Nabal answered David's servants, Who is this David? And who is the son of Jesse? Many servants are breaking away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread and water and meat, and the meat I have slaughtered for my shearers, and give it to men coming from who knows where? Verse 12. David's men turned around and went back, and when they arrived, they reported every word. David said to his men, Each of you strap on your sword. So they did, and David strapped on his as well. About 400 men went up with David, while 200 stayed with the supplies. Home. Verse 14. One of the servants told Abigail, Nabal's wife, David sent messengers from the wilderness to give your master his greetings, but he hurled insults at him. Yet these men were very good to us. They did not mistreat us, and the whole time we were out in the fields near them, and nothing was missing. Day and night they were a wall around around us the whole time, and we were herding our sheep near them. Now I think that now think it over and see what you can do, because disaster is hanging over your master, this whole household, which is he is such a wicked man that no one can talk to him. Abigail acted quickly. She took 200 loaves of bread, and 2 skins of wine, and 5 dressed sheep, and 5 shays of roast grain, and 100 cakes of raisins, and 200 cakes of pressed figs, and loaded them up on donkeys. And then she told her servants, "Go on ahead, I'll follow you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal. Verse 20. After she came riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, there were David and his men were descending toward her, and she met them. And David had just said, "It's been useless, all my watching over this fellow's property in the wilderness, and so that nothing of his was missing, and he was paid back. He has paid me back evil for good. May God deal with David, be it ever so severely, if by morning I leave one male who belongs to him." Verse 23. When Abigail saw David, she got off quickly, quickly got off her donkey and bowed down before David, with her face to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, "Pardon your servant, my lord. Let me speak to you. Hear what your servant has to say. Please pay no attention, my lord, to that wicked man Nabal. He is just like his name. His name means fool. And folly goes with him. And as for me, your servant, I did not see the men my lord sent. And now, my lord, as surely as the Lord your God lives, and as you live, since the Lord has kept you from bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hands, may your enemies and all who are intent on harming the Lord, my lord, like Nabal, and let this gift which your servant has brought to you, my lord, be given to the men who follow you." Verse 28. Please forgive your servant's presumption. The Lord God will certainly make a lasting dynasty of my lord, because you fought the Lord's battles, and no wrongdoing will be found in you as long as you live. Even though someone is pursuing you to take your life, the life of my lord will be bound securely in the bundle of the living by the Lord your God. But the lives of your enemies he will hurl away as from the pocket of a sling. When the Lord has filled for my Lord every good thing he promises concerning him, and has anointed him ruler over Israel, my Lord will not have his conscience the staggering burden of needless bloodshed, or from having avenged himself. And when the Lord your God has brought my Lord success, remember your servant. Verse 32. David said to Abigail, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment, and for keeping me from bloodshed this day, and from avenging myself with my own hands. Otherwise, as surely as the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from harming you, if you had not come quickly to meet me not one male belonging to Nabal would have been left alive by daybreak." Verse 35. Then David accepted from her hand what she had brought him, and said, "Go home in peace. I have heard your words and granted your request." 36. Then Abigail went to Nabal. He was in the house, holding a banquet like that of a king. He was high in spirits and very drunk, and she told him nothing at all until daybreak. Then in the morning, when Nabal was sober, his wife told him all these things, and his heart failed him, and he became like a stone. About 10 days later, the Lord struck Nabal, and he died. 39. When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Praise be the Lord who has upheld my cause against Nabal for treating me with contempt. He has kept his servant from doing wrong, and has brought Nabal's wrongdoing down on his own head." Not another verse. Then David sent word to Abigail, asking her to become his wife. his servants to Carmel and said, his servants went to Carmel and said to Abigail, David has sent us to take you to become his wife. 41. She bowed down with her face to the ground and said, I am your servant. I am ready to serve and wash the feet of my Lord's servants. Abigail quickly got on a donkey and attended her 5 female servants. Went with David's messengers and became his wife. David also married Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they both were his wives. But Saul had given his daughter Michal, David's wife, to Paltiel, son of Laish, who is from Galim. Chapter 26. The Zuphites went to Saul at Gibeah and said, Is not David hiding in the hill country of Hakilah, which faces Jeshimon? So Saul went down to the desert of Ziph with his 3,000 select Israelite troops to search for David there. Saul made his camp beside the road on the hill of Hakilah facing Jeshimon, but David stayed in the wilderness. When he saw that Saul had followed him there, he sent out scouts to learn that Saul had definitely arrived. Verse 5. Then Saul set out and went to the place where Saul camped. Then David set out to the place and went to the place where Saul had camped. He saw where Saul and Abner, son of Ner, and the commander of the army had laid down. Saul was lying inside the camp, with the army encamped around him. David then asked Ahimelech the Hittite, and Abishai, son of Zuriah, Joab's brother, Who will go down into the camp with me to Saul? I will go with you, said Abishai. So David and Abishai went to the army by night, and there was Saul lying asleep inside the camp with his spear stuck in the ground, near his head. Abner and the soldiers were lying around him. Abishai said to David, Today God has delivered your enemy into your hands. Now let me pin him to the ground with one thrust of the spear. I won't strike him twice. Verse 9. But David said to Abishai, Don't destroy him. We can't lay a hand on the Lord's anointed can we lay a hand? Who can lay a hand on the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? As surely as the Lord lives, he said, the Lord himself will strike him, or his time will come and he will die, for he will go into the battle and perish. But the Lord forbid that I should lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. Now get the spear and the water jug that are near his head, and let's go. Verse 12. So David took the spear and the water jug near Saul's head, and they left. No one saw or knew about it, nor did anyone wake up. They were all sleeping because the Lord had put them into a deep sleep. 13. Then David crossed over to the other side and stood on the top of the hill some distance away, and there was a wide space between them. And he called out to the army of Abner, son of Ner, Aren't you going to answer me, Abner? Abner replied, Who are you who calls to the king? 15. David said, You're a man, aren't you? And who is like you in Israel? Why didn't you guard the Lord your king? Someone came to destroy the Lord your king. What you have done now is not good. As surely as the Lord lives, you and your men must die, because you did not guard your master, the Lord's anointed. Look around you. Where are the king's spear and water jug that were near his head? 17. Saul recognized David's voice and said, Is that your voice, David, my son? David replied, Yes, it is, my lord the king. And he added, Why is my lord pursuing his servant? What have I done? And what wrong am I guilty of? Now let the Lord my king listen to his servant's words. If the Lord has incited you against me, then may he accept an offering. However, the people have done it. May they be cursed before the Lord, and they have driven me to this day from my share of the Lord's inheritance, and have said, Go serve other gods. Now do not let my blood fall to the ground far from the presence of the Lord, as the king of Israel has come out to look for a flea, as one hunts for a partridge in the mountains. Verse 21. And then Saul said, I have sinned. Come back, David my son, because you considered my life precious today. I will not harm you again. Surely as I have acted like a fool, I have been terribly wrong. Verse 22. Here is the king's spear, David answered. Let one of your young men come over and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for their righteousness and faithfulness. The Lord delivered you into my hands today, but I would not lay a hand on the Lord's anointed. As sure as I valued your life today, may the Lord value my life and deliver me from all trouble. Verse 25. Then Saul said to David, May you be blessed, David, my son. You will do great things, and surely triumph. So David went on his way, and Saul returned home. Chapter 27. But David thought to himself, One of these days I will be destroyed by the hand of Saul. The best thing I can do is to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul will give up searching for me anywhere in Israel, and I will slip out of his hand. So David and his 600 men with him left and went over to Achish, son of Maok, king of Gath. David and his men settled in Gath with Achish, each man and his family with him. David had his 2 wives, Abinoam of Jezreel, and Abigail of Carmel, the widow of Nabal. When Saul was told that David had fled to Gath, he no longer searched for him. Verse 5. Then David said to Achish, If I have found favor in your eyes, let a place be assigned to me in one of the 2 country towns, that I may live there. Why should your servant live in the royal city with you? So on that day Achish gave him Ziklag, and it has belonged to the kings of Judah ever since. David lived in Philistine territory for over a year and 4 months. Verse 8. Now David and his men went up and raided the Jeshurites and the Girzites and the Amalekites. From ancient times these people had lived in a land extending to Shur and Egypt. Whenever David attacked an area, he did not leave a man or a woman alive, but took sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels and clothes, and he returned to Achish. When Achish asked, Where did you go raiding today? David would say, Against the Negev of Judah, or against the Negev of Jehrameel, or against the Negev of the Kenites. He did not leave a man or a woman alive to be brought to Gath, for he thought, They might inform on us and say this is what David did. And such was his practice as long as he lived in the Philistine territory. Achish trusted David and said to himself, He has become so obnoxious to his people, the Israelites, that he will be my servant for life. Chapter 28. In those days the Philistines gathered their forces against Israel. Achish said to David, You must understand that you and your men will accompany me in the army. David said, Then you will see for yourself what your servant can do. Achish replied, Very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life. Verse 3. Now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had mourned for him, and buried him in his own town of Ramah. Saul had expelled the mediums and spiritists from the land. The Philistines assembled and came and set up camp at Shunem, while Saul gathered Israel and set up camp at Gilboa. When Saul saw the Philistine army, he was afraid. Terror filled his heart. He inquired of the Lord, but the Lord did not answer him by dreams or Urim or prophets. Saul then said to his attendants, Find me a woman who is a medium, so that I may inquire of her. There is one in Endor, they said. So Saul disguised himself, putting on other clothes. And that night he and 2 men went to the woman. "Consult a spirit for me," he said, "and bring up for me the one I name." But the woman said to him, "Surely you know that what Saul has done. He has cut off the mediums and spiritists from the land. Why should you have set a trap for my life to bring about my death?" Verse 10. Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As surely as the Lord lives, you will not be punished for this." Then the woman asked, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" "Bring up Samuel," he said. When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out at the top of her voice and said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." The king said to her, "Don't be afraid. What do you see?" The woman said, "I see a ghostly figure coming up out of the earth." "What does he look like?" he asked. "An old man wearing a robe is coming up," she said. Then Saul knew it was Samuel, and he bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" "I am in great distress," Saul said. "The Philistines are fighting against me, and God has departed from me. He no longer answers by the prophets or by dreams, so I have called on you to tell me what to do." Samuel said, "Why do you consult me now that the Lord has departed from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done what he predicted through me. The Lord has torn the kingdom from out of your hands and given it to one of your neighbors, to David, because you did not obey the Lord or carry out his fierce wrath against the Amalekites. The Lord has done to you this day the Lord has done this to you today. The Lord will deliver both Israel and you into the hands of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines." Immediately Saul fell full strength on the ground, filled with fear because Samuel's words. His strength was gone, for he had eaten nothing all that day and all that night. 21. When the woman came to Saul and saw that he was greatly shaken, he said, "Look, your servant has obeyed you. I took my life in my hands, and I did what you told me. Now, please listen to your servant and let me give you some food so you may eat and have strength to go on your way." He refused and said, "I will not eat." But his men joined the woman in urging him, and he listened to them. But he got up from the ground and sat on the couch. 24. The woman had a fattened calf at the house, which she butchered at once. She took some flour and kneaded it and baked bread without yeast. Then she set it before Saul and his men, and they ate. That same night they got up and left. Chapter 29. The Philistines gathered their forces at Aphek, and Israel camped by the spring of Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers marched with their units of hundreds and thousands, David and his men were marching at the rear with Achish. The commanders of the Philistines asked, "What about these Hebrews?" Achish replied, "Is this not David, who was an officer of Saul, king of Israel? He was already with me for over a year, and from the day he left Saul until now I have found no fault in him." Verse 4. But the Philistine commanders were angry with Achish and said, "Send the man back, that he may return to the place you assigned him. He must not go with us into battle, or he will turn against us during the fighting. How better could he regain his master's favor than by taking the heads of our men? Isn't this David they sang about in their dances?" Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. So Achish called David and said to him, "As surely as the Lord lives, you have been reliable, and I would be pleased to have you serve with me in the army. From the day you have came to me until today I have found no fault with you, but the rulers do not approve of you. Now turn back and go in peace. Do nothing to displease the Philistine rulers." Verse 8. "But what have I done?" David asked. What have you found against your servant from the day I came to you until now? Why can't I go and fight against the enemies of the Lord, my lord the king?" Verse 9. Achish answered, I now know that you have been as pleasing in my eyes as an angel of God. Nevertheless, the Philistine commanders have said, 'He must not go up with us into battle.' Now get up early, along with your master's servants who have come with you, and leave in the morning as soon as light." So David and his men got up early in the morning and went back to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Jezreel. Chapter 30. David and his men reached Ziklag on the third day. Now the Amalekites had raided the Negev and Ziklag. They attacked Ziklag and burned it. And that day, and they had taken captive the women and everyone else in it, and both young and old. They killed none of them, but carried them off as far as they went on their way. Verse 3. Then David and his men reached Ziklag, and they found it destroyed by fire, and their wives and sons and daughters taken captive. So David and his men wept aloud, and they had no strength left to weep, until they had no strength left to weep. David's two wives had been captured, Abinoam and Jezreel, of Jezreel, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him, each one was bitter in spirit because of his sons and daughters, but David found strength in the Lord his God. Then David said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." Abiathar brought it to him, and David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them?" "Pursue them," he answered. "You will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue." Verse 9. David and the 600 men with him came to Besor valley, where some stayed behind. 200 of them were too exhausted to cross the valley, but David and the other 400 continued in the pursuit. And they found the Egyptian in the field and brought him to David. And they gave him water to drink and food to eat, and part of a cake of pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and was revived, for he had not eaten any food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. Verse 13. David asked, "Who do you belong to? Where do you come from?" He said, "I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I became ill 3 days ago. We raided the Negev of the Kerahites, and some territory belonging to Judah, and the Negev of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag." David asked him, "Can you lead me down to this raiding party?" And he answered, "Swear to me that before God you will not kill me or hand me over to my master, and I will take you down to them." Verse 16. He led David down there, and there they were, scattered over the countryside, eating and drinking and reveling because of the great amount of plunder they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from Judah. David fought them from dusk until evening of the next day, and none of them got away, except 400 young men who rode off on camels and fled. 18. David recovered everything the Amalekites had taken, including his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, young or old, boy or girl, plunder or anything else they had taken. David brought everything back. He took all the flocks and herds, and his men drove ahead of their livestock, and saying, "This is David's plunder." And then David came to the 200 men who had been too exhausted to follow him and who were left behind at Besor Valley. They came out to meet David and the men with him. As David and his men approached, he asked them how they were. But all the evil men and troublemakers among David's followers said, "Because they did not go with us, we will not share with them the plunder we recovered. However, each man may take his wife and children and go." 23. David replied, "No, my brothers, you must not do that to what the Lord has given us. He has protected us and delivered into our hands the raiding party that came against us. Who will listen to what you say? The share of the man who stayed with the supplies to be the same as that of the one who went down into battle. So all will share alike." David made this a statute and an ordinance for Israel from that day until this. Verse 26. And then David reached Ziklag, and sent some of the plunder to the elders of Judah who were his friends, saying, "Here is a gift from your plunder of the Lord's enemies." David sent to those who were in Bethel, Ramoth, Negev, Jatir, those in Aror, Siphmoth, and Eshtimoa, and Rakal, and those in the south of the Jerahmeelites, and the Kenites, and those in Hormah, and Bor Ashan, and Athak, and Hebron, and to all those other places where he and his men had roamed. Chapter 31. Now the Philistines fought against Israel. The Israelites fled before them, and many fell dead on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines were in hot pursuit of Saul and his sons, and they killed his sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting grew fierce around Saul, and when the archers overtook him, they wounded him critically. Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, or these uncircumcised fellows will come and run me through and abuse me." But his armor-bearer was terrified and would not do it, so Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his sword and died with him. So Saul and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men died together at the same day. Verse 7. When the Israelites along the valley and across the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled, and Saul and his sons had died, they abandoned their towns and fled. The Philistines came and occupied them. Verse 8. The next day, when the Philistines came to strip the dead, they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped him of his armor, and they sent his messengers throughout the land of Philistines to proclaim the news of the temple and their idols and among their people. They put his armor in the temple of the Ashtaroths and fastened his body to the wall of Bethshan. Verse 11. When the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their valiant men marched through the night to Bethshan, and they took down the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and went to Jabesh, where they burned them. Then they took their bones and buried them under a tamarisk tree in Jabesh. And then they fasted 7 days. That's the end of 1 Samuel. Well, I don't have much of an introduction for 2 Samuel. You know, they're really the same story. It's not originally separated. Samuel is one story all the way through. Now it is separated for a reason here, because if you notice that Saul just died, and so that's a real divider in the book, in the story. So now we have the end of Saul as the king and the beginning of the anointed David as king. So, and you saw God's plan work out, and David knew. I mean, David is anointed by God, but he's also a man after God's own heart. And you see that in the genuineness of the way that David is. And now we get to see David become king. So let's jump right into it. 2 Samuel chapter 1. After the death of King Saul, David returned from striking down the Amalekites and stayed in Ziklag 2 days. On the 3rd day a man arrived from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. When he came to David, he fell onto the ground to pay him honor. "Where have you come from?" David asked him. He answered, "I have escaped from the Israelite camp." "What happened?" David asked. "Tell me." "The men fled from battle," he replied. "Many of them fell and died, and Saul and his son Johnathan are dead." Then David said to the young man who brought him the report, How long do you know that Saul and his son Johnathan are dead?" Verse 6. "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa." The young man said, "And where is Saul leaning on it?" And there was Saul leaning on his spear, and with the chariots and other drivers in hot pursuit. And he went and turned around and saw me and called out to me and said, "What can I do?" And he said, "Who are you?" "An Amalekite," I answered. So then he said to me, "Stand here by me and kill me. I'm in the throes of death, but I'm still alive." So I stood beside him and I killed him, because I knew that after he had fallen he could not survive. I took the crown that was on his head and the band that was on his arm, and I have brought them here to you, my lord. Verse 11. Then David and all the men around him took hold of their clothes and tore them. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening, and for Saul and his son Johnathan, and for the army of the Lord, for the nation of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man who brought him the report, "Where are you from?" "I am the son of a foreigner, an Amalekite," he answered. And David asked him, Why weren't you afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of his men and said, "Go and strike him down." So he struck him down, and he died. For David said to him, "Your blood be on your own head. Your mouth testify against you when you said, 'I killed the Lord's anointed.'" Verse 17. David took up the lament concerning Saul and his son Johnathan, and ordered that the people of Judah be taught this lament of the bow. For it is written in the book of Jashar, "A gazelle lies in your own heights, Israel. How the mighty have fallen." Verse 20. "Tell it not in Gath, and proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, lest the daughters of the Philistines be glad, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised rejoice. Mountains of Gilboa, may you have neither drawn dew nor rain, nor may no showers fall on your terraced fields. For there the shield of mighty was despised, the shield of Saul no longer rubbed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the flesh of the mighty, the bow of Johnathan did not turn back. The sword of Saul did not return unsatisfied. Saul and Johnathan, in life they were loved and admired. In death they were not parted. They were swifter than eagles. They were stronger than lions. Verse 24. Daughters of Israel, weep for Saul, who clothed you in scarlet and finery, and adorned your fine garments with ornaments of gold. How the mighty have fallen in battle, and Johnathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Johnathan, my brother, for you were very dear to me, and your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of a woman. Verse 27. How the mighty have fallen, the weapons of war have perished. Chapter 2. In the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah?" he asked. The Lord said, "Go up." David asked, "Where shall I go?" "To Hebron," the Lord answered. So David went up there with his 2 wives, Abinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. Verse 3. David also took the men who were with him, each with his family, and they settled in Hebron and its towns. When the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the tribe of Judah. When David was told that it was the men of Jabesh Gilead who had buried Saul, he sent messengers to them, saying, The Lord bless you for showing this kindness to Saul your master by burying him. May the Lord your master, may the Lord now show you kindness and faithfulness, and I too will show the same favor because you have done this. Now then be strong and brave, for Saul your master is dead, and the people of Judah have anointed me king over them. Verse 8. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, and the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and made him king over Gilead, Ashuri, and Jezreel, and also over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. Verse 10. Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. The tribe of Judah, however, remained loyal to David. The length of time David was king of Hebron over Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Abner, son of Ner, together with the men of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, left Mahanaim and went to Gibeon. Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool, and one group on the other side. Verse 14. Then Abner said to Joab, "Let's have some of the young men get up and fight hand to hand in front of us." All right, let them do it," Joab said. So they stood up and were counted off, 12 men for Benjamin, and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 for David. When each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his dagger into an opponent's side, and they fell down together. So that place in Gibeon was called Helkath Hazurim. The battle that day was very fierce, and Abner and the Israelites were defeated by David's men. Verse 18. The 3 sons of Uriah were there, Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. Now Asahel was a fleet-footed and wild gazelle. He chased Abner, turning neither to the right nor to the left, and pursued him. And Abner looked behind him, and he said, "Is that you, Asahel?" "It is," he answered. When Abner said to him, "Turn aside to the right or to the left, and take on one of the young men, and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel would not stop chasing him. And Abner warned Asahel, "Stop chasing me. Why should I strike you down? How could I look your brother Joab in the face?" But Asahel refused to give up on the pursuit, so Abner thrust the butt of his spear into Asahel's stomach, and the spear came through his back, and he fell there and died on the spot, and every man stopped when he came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died. But Joab and Abishai pursued Abner, and the sun was setting, and they came to the hill of Ammah, near Giah, and on the way to the wasteland of Gibeon. And the men of Benjamin rallied behind Abner, and they formed themselves into a group and took their stand on top of a hill. Abner called out to Joab, "Must the sword devour forever? Do you not realize that this will end in bitterness? How long before you order your men to stop pursuing their fellow Israelites?" Verse 27. Joab answered, "As surely as God lives, if you had not spoken, the men would have continued pursuing them until morning." So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the troops came to a halt. They no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight any more. And all that night Abner and his men marched through Arabah, and they crossed the Jordan through the morning hours, and came to Mahanaim. Verse 30. Then Joab stopped pursuing Abner, and assembled the whole army beside Asahel. 19 of David's men were found missing, but David's men had killed 360 360 Benjamites who were with Abner, and they took Asahel and buried him in his father's tomb at Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men marched all night and arrived at Hebron by daybreak. Chapter 3. We're only going to read a few verses here, about 15 verses. The war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Sons were born to David at Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. The second, Caleb, the son of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmi, the king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, the son of David's wife, Elgah. And these were born to David in Hebron. Verse 6. During the war between the house of Saul and the house of David, Abner had been strengthening his own position in the house of Saul. Now Saul had a concubine named Rizpah, daughter of Aiah. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why did you sleep with my father's concubine?" Abner was very angry because of what Ishbosheth said, so he answered, "Am I a dog's head on Judah's side? This very day I am loyal to the house of your father Saul and to his family and friends, and I have handed you over to David. And I haven't handed you over to David, yet now you accuse me of an offense involving this woman. May God deal with Abner, be it ever so severely, if I do not do for David what the Lord had promised him in an oath, and transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul, and establish David's throne over Israel and Judah from Dan to Beersheba." Ishbosheth did not dare say another word to Abner, because he was afraid of him. Verse 12. Then Abner sent his messengers on his behalf to say to David, "Whose land is it? Make an agreement with me, and I will help you bring all Israel over to you." "Good," said David. "I will make an agreement with you, but I demand one thing of you. Do not come into my presence unless you bring Michal, daughter of Saul, when you come to see me." Then David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, son of Saul, demanding, "Give me my wife Michal, whom I betrothed to myself for the price of 100 Philistine foreskins." 15. So Ishbosheth gave orders, and had her taken from her husband Paltiel, son of Laish, her husband, however, went with her, weeping behind her all the way to Bahurim. And then Abner said to him, "Go back home." So he went back home. Verse 17. Abner conferred with the elders of Israel, and said to him, "For some time you have wanted to make David your king. Now do it, for the Lord promised David, 'By my servant David I will rescue my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all their enemies.'" 19. Abner spoke also to the Benjamites in person. Then he went to Hebron to tell David everything that Israel and the whole tribe of Benjamin wanted to do. When Abner, who had 20 men with him, came to David at Hebron, David prepared a feast for him and his men. Then Abner said to David, "Let me go at once and assemble all Israel for my lord the king, so they made a covenant with you, so they may make a covenant with you, and that you may rule over all your heart desires." So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. Well, that's it for today. It's been a lot of fun reading today. I really enjoy stories about David, if you can't tell. Good night. God bless you.